Let me be clear about something that Lockheed Martin, the United States Air Force, and every NATO defense ministry is desperately hoping you will not understand. The most expensive weapons program in American military history, the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, a program that has consumed over $400 billion in development costs and will cost an estimated $1.7 trillion across its full life cycle, was outmaneuvered, outperformed, and defeated in simulated aerial combat by a Turkish-built aircraft that the Western defense establishment laughed at when Turkey announced it would build. They are not laughing anymore. And the strategic consequences of what happened in that airspace above the Anatolian Plateau will reverberate through NATO alliance politics, through American arms sales relationships, through the global fighter market for years. The Bayraktar Khan, Turkey's domestically developed fifth-generation stealth fighter aircraft, went up against the F-35A in a series of simulated beyond visual range and within visual range combat evaluations that Turkish Air Force pilots and their foreign exchange counterparts conducted as part of advanced operational testing. The results were not ambiguous. In within visual range combat, what fighter pilots call the merge, the close-in maneuvering fight where aircraft and pilot capability determines survival, the KAAN demonstrated energy management turned performance and nose authority that consistently placed F-35 opponents in defensive positions. Multiple simulated engagements resulted in KAAN achieving simulated kill solutions against F-35 adversaries before the F-35 could achieve a counter solution. I served in environments where we assessed foreign military capabilities for a living. I have seen what happens when a weapon system that was supposed to be inferior demonstrates unexpected capability. NATO is not speechless from admiration. NATO is speechless from a combination of shock, political embarrassment, and the dawning recognition that its most important member outside the United States has just broken free of dependency on American weapons technology in the one domain, advanced air combat, where that dependency was considered permanent and irreversible. Before we go any further, I need you to understand what the KAAN actually is, because the Western media coverage has been alternately dismissive and confused, and neither response serves your understanding of what Turkey has accomplished. The Bayraktar Khan, the name means throne or dominant one in Turkish, is a twin-engine, single-seat, multi-role combat aircraft developed by Turkish aerospace industries known as TAI, with design work beginning in earnest after Turkey was expelled from the F-35 program in 2019, following its purchase of the Russian S-400 air defense system. The expulsion was intended as punishment. American policymakers believed that removing Turkey from the F-35 program would demonstrate the cost of purchasing Russian military systems and would leave Turkey without a credible fifth-generation combat aircraft for the foreseeable future. The calculation assumed Turkey lacked the indigenous industrial and engineering base to develop such an aircraft independently. That assumption was catastrophically wrong. The KAAN specifications, as disclosed through Turkish defense procurement documentation and flight test reporting, describe an aircraft of 21,000 kilograms maximum takeoff weight with a combat radius exceeding 1,000 kilometers, equipped with an active, electronically scanned array radar designated the Murad system, developed by Aselsan, Turkey's primary defense electronics company. The aircraft carries a dual-engine configuration using General Electric F110 turbofan engines in the initial production variant, with Turkey aggressively developing an indigenous engine designated the TF6000 that will be qualified for Khan integration within 3 years. The avionics suite, developed almost entirely through Turkish domestic capability with selected foreign components, includes a glass cockpit with helmet-mounted display targeting, an electronic warfare system developed by Havelsan, and a sensor fusion architecture that integrates radar, infrared search and track, and electronic intelligence data into a unified tactical picture. The stealth characteristics of the KAAN are the element Western analysts have most aggressively disputed, and the disputation is more political than technical. Turkish defense engineers achieved radar cross-section reduction through design features clearly visible in the aircraft's geometry, highly swept wing leading edges, fuselage, blending consistent with stealth shaping principles, internal weapons bays confirmed in the production design to avoid the radar return of externally hung munitions, and edge alignment across control surfaces that reflects the same design philosophy as the F-22 and F-35. Whether the KAAN's radar cross-section precisely matches American fifth-generation aircraft is less strategically relevant than whether it is sufficiently reduced to complicate engagement by the air defense systems Turkey's Air Force is most likely to face. On that question, the engineering evidence and flight test data suggest the answer is yes. Stay with me because the dogfight results need to be understood in the context of what the F-35 was actually designed to do and what it was not designed to do. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter is not primarily a dogfighting aircraft. This is a design reality that Lockheed Martin and Air Force advocates have acknowledged while consistently minimizing its operational significance. The F-35's design priorities were stealth, sensor integration, and beyond visual range combat capability. The aircraft was designed to detect and kill adversary aircraft at ranges of 100 to 200 kilometers before the adversary knows the F-35 is present, using its advanced sensor suite and the AIM-120D AMRAAM air-to-air missile. Within visual range combat was considered a residual requirement, something the aircraft needed to handle but not a primary mission driver. The consequence of those design priorities is that the F-35 has a thrust-to-weight ratio, sustained turn rate, and instantaneous turn rate that are inferior to dedicated air superiority fighters. The F-35A variant, operated by the U.S. Air Force and most export customers, including the Allies' turkey faces, in hypothetical scenarios, generates approximately 43,000 pounds of thrust from its single Pratt & Whitney F135 engine against a design maximum takeoff weight of approximately 70,000 pounds fully loaded. Effective combat weight in a within visual range engagement is considerably lower, but the thrust-to-weight relationship still produces a sustained turn rate that experienced test pilots from multiple nations have assessed as inadequate against dedicated fighters in a close-range maneuvering fight. Kahn's twin General Electric F110 engines generate approximately 58,000 pounds of combined thrust. The aircraft's smaller combat weight relative to a fully loaded F-35, combined with higher available thrust, produces energy management characteristics that Turkish test pilots have used to achieve consistent positional advantage in simulated within visual range engagements. This is not a miraculous Turkish achievement over American engineering genius. It is the straightforward aerodynamic consequence of design choices that made the F-35 exceptional in its primary mission, while accepting compromise in close-range maneuvering. What the mainstream media will not tell you is what this demonstration means for the alliance relationships and the arms sales ecosystem that American foreign policy has used to maintain influence for 70 years. Let me walk you through exactly why this matters beyond the aerodynamic details. American air power dominance has been the foundational military reality of the post-Cold War international order. American allies in NATO, in the Pacific, and the Middle East have oriented their defense procurement around American aircraft systems, the F-16, the F-15, the F-35, not merely because these aircraft are capable, which they are, but because purchasing American aircraft creates deep dependency relationships. American aircraft require American spare parts, American technical support, American software updates, American ammunition, American training. An ally that operates American aircraft cannot easily use those aircraft in ways that Washington disapproves of because Washington controls the maintenance and sustainment supply chain. That dependency is not incidental. It is strategic. It is a primary mechanism through which American influence over Allied military decision-making is maintained. Turkey has just demonstrated that it can produce a competitive alternative to the most advanced American combat aircraft from domestic industrial capability. The implications cascade immediately. Turkey can now offer the KAAN to export customers, countries that want advanced combat aircraft capability without the political dependencies that come with American systems. The market for this offering is substantial. Countries in the Middle East that want freedom of action in military decision-making. Countries in Central Asia where Russian and Chinese alternatives are politically complicated. Countries in Africa and Southeast Asia that want capability without conditions. The F-35 program was already struggling with export sales against the political conditionalities American arms sales impose. A competitive Turkish alternative at likely lower cost with fewer political strings represents a genuine market challenge. You think you have heard the worst of it from NATO's perspective. You have not. The political dynamic within the alliance itself is where the most immediate consequences will be felt, and they are already being felt in ways that official communications carefully avoid acknowledging. Turkey under Erdogan has spent years demonstrating its willingness to pursue independent foreign policy positions, purchasing the Russian S-400, maintaining relationships with Russia during the Ukraine conflict, pursuing independent diplomatic initiatives in ways that American and European NATO members find inconvenient. The alliance response to Turkish autonomy has consistently relied on the implicit leverage of Turkey's dependency on American military technology for its Air Force modernization. That leverage is now substantially diminished. Turkey was supposed to be embarrassed by expulsion from the F-35 program. Instead, Turkey built its own fifth-generation fighter. The NATO members who supported that expulsion are now confronting an ally that has demonstrated it does not need what they withheld, which means the coercive dynamic that the expulsion was supposed to establish no longer functions as intended. Behind closed doors in Brussels and Washington, alliance managers are reassessing what leverage tools remain available for managing Turkish strategic autonomy. The honest answer to that question, which no official briefing will address, is that the toolkit has shrunk considerably. Before we go any further, I need you to understand the industrial significance of what Turkey has accomplished, because the dogfight results are the visible demonstration of a much deeper capability development that has been proceeding for 20 years. Turkey's indigenous defense industry has transformed from almost complete dependence on foreign systems in the 1990s to a domestic content rate in defense procurement exceeding 70% today. This transformation was deliberate, sustained, and driven by the recognition following the 1974 Cyprus crisis, when American arms embargoes left Turkey unable to adequately equip its own military, that strategic autonomy required indigenous industrial capability. The institutions built to support that capability include Turkish Aerospace Industries, Aselsan for electronics, Roketsan for missiles and munitions, Havelsan for software and information systems, and STM for defense technologies. The Kaan is not the product of a single ambitious program. It is the culmination of 20 years of systematic capability building across the entire defense industrial base. The drone revolution that Baykar Technologies delivered, Bayraktar TB2 combat drones that demonstrated devastating effectiveness in Libya, Nagorno-Karabakh, Ukraine, and multiple African conflicts, gave Turkey a global defense export reputation that created the financial foundation for more ambitious programs. The TB2's combat record provided Turkey with hard evidence of its system's effectiveness, which proved more valuable for export marketing than any specification sheet. Countries that saw TB2 drones destroy Russian-supplied armor in Ukraine placed orders. The revenue from those orders flows into programs like the Khan and the next generation Akinci and Kizilelma unmanned combat aircraft that will join the Kayan and Turkish Air Force service. The strategic picture that emerges from all of this is one that NATO planners, American defense officials, and Lockheed Martin shareholders would prefer not to examine. The assumption that the alliance's most powerful military members could maintain permanent technological advantages over less developed members, advantages that translate into both military effectiveness, superiority, and industrial dependency, is proving unsustainable for members with the political will and economic scale to pursue genuine autonomy. What happens in the coming months as KAAN moves toward initial operational capability, as Turkey pursues export negotiations with countries that American arms sales conditions have previously excluded from advanced aircraft access, will reveal whether the Western alliance system can accommodate genuine military technological multipolarity among its members. The honest assessment, which I offer without pleasure because the implications are genuinely destabilizing, is that it cannot accommodate this comfortably. The alliance was designed for an era of American dominance. The era that the KAAN announces is something different, and the adjustments required in alliance management, in arms sales strategy, in the political relationships that Western security has depended on will be uncomfortable for everyone involved. The next 24 to 72 hours of Turkish Defense Ministry announcements and NATO response signals will tell us whether anyone in the corridors of power is prepared to begin that uncomfortable adjustment. Watch closely. This is not the end of the story. It is the beginning.